Hello and welcome to your first program in Java, or Hello World as it's often known. So the first thing we need to do is to start an editor. I'm going to use Nano, and what we type in now is the file name. It's going to be a simple Hello World .java. Note the capitalization of Hello World. In Java, this is very significant, which I'll explain at the next step. There's an example I prepared earlier. So you can see I've created a public class, Hello World, and again, notice that capitalization. The name of the class must be the same as the name of the file. That's very important in Java. Those of you coming from a C or C++ background, that does take a bit of getting used to. You can only have one class per file. The name of the class must match the file name. It took me a bit of time to get used to that concept when I first converted over from, well, I started on C and then C++ many years ago. Now in Java, just as in C, it starts or looks for a main to start, and what you do is you put a main inside a class, and I'll explain why in a minute. Let's just go through this. It needs to be public so it can be seen to the outside world. By definition, it needs to be a static, which means it exists even without the class containing it being instantiated. As with C, C++, it can return either a void or an int. I'm not interested in the return value, so I've chosen void. The other thing is, we're used to argv, argc, and in some cases arg in C, C++. Java does this by using a string array, which it calls args by definition. In theory, I guess you could call it anything, but it's nearly always called args. Now we want to tell the system here that we want to output something, and .out is the same as stood out. There's also a .err, which you can't guess, so that's the same as std. We're going to print, and I want a line feed at the end of it, so I put ln. If I just put print, then I would need the good old-fashioned C of putting in a \n. But println adds a \n for us. It makes no difference if I add one, it just means we get two line feeds at the end. Close our curly brace for main, and then close our curly brace for the class. Now, the reason this is significant is each class can actually have a main member. Now, this is where Java and C get a little bit different. In a C program, you only have one main. Well, normally, you only have one main. Java, I could have several classes, each with a main. And so I could use a main to test that class. And then when I run the code, I can select which main, or tell it which main to run. That gets a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial, but just bear that in mind. Okay, so I think on Nano it's Control X. I don't really use Nano very much. I learned Unix a long time ago where about the only option I had was VI or Emacs, and both were difficult to use, and you couldn't always rely on Emacs being available, so I learnt VI. But anyway, Control X, yep, save it, yep, and save it, yep. Now we're going to compile it, which is used in the Java compiler, which is called Javac, which is Java with a C after it. Tell it the name of the program, or file actually, at this stage it's only a file that you want to build. Javac will do the compilation and will create what's called bytecode, which, while strictly speaking, it's not object code, but if you're converting from C, C++, at this stage you can think of it in that way if it helps you to understand. So we've done that, and now we have to run it. And Java doesn't produce the executable code which you would expect after compiling a C code. It produces bytecode. So Java programs have to run inside what's called a Java virtual machine, which, if you see in the rest of the slides on this, it'll tell you how to get to the wiki and explain all about JVMs and why we have them in Java. But basically a JVM means, or enables us to write one piece of code and then run it on, for example, a Linux system, a Microsoft system, a Mac, or various minis and mainframes and whatever. So now, and we don't need to do any rewriting. That's the big thing about Java. You don't need to rewrite the code as you change systems or system architecture. So, to run it, we type in Java, world, and then you see our message. It's got a line feed which the println put in, and it's got an extra line feed which I tagged on the end. And that is it for this tutorial. Like I say, look at the slides either side of this video clip, or at the beginning and the end of this video clip, depending on how you're viewing the clip, and that'll give you details of how to get to the full Java tutorial and other tutorials that we do on Green PNF. Thanks for your time, and hope you found that useful.